This from Peter to open up the show. By the way, on game day. Yeah, there's a game tonight. Peter writes, Kevin, I'm the PR consultant that used to write you during the Snyder days. On a PR damage scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being the worst, this was an 11. Disastrous. You had a sense of how bad it was on your show today, meaning yesterday, but as a PR person for 30 years, I knew it was way worse. This was, as you said, unforced, self-inflicted, and whomever was responsible for it better learn from it and understand the damage they did to Jaden yesterday. The LSU fan base isn't that forgiving, and if he doesn't play well this year, our fan base isn't very forgiving. I still can't figure out what they were trying to achieve, but the reaction was so predictable. No turning the clock back on this one. Well, good morning, everybody. Max is here. Ben Standing will jump on with us at 12. We've got a guest from South Florida coming on at 11 to talk about the team that Washington is playing. By the way, the Dolphins are 3.5-point favorites tonight. Remember in the very, very well thought out NFL.com preseason power rankings, there wasn't much difference between the 29th ranked Washington Commanders and the 32nd ranked Miami Dolphins. But still, there must be some information with respect to what Miami's going to do with starters tonight. I would assume they believe Malik Willis, remember he is the starting quarterback there, is going to play a lot with some of the starters, and that's why they're favored by 3.5. Every single preseason game last night, I don't know if you noticed this, Max. Maybe you did, maybe you didn't. But every single preseason game last night went under the total. After last week, if you recall, the Hall of Fame game sailed over the total.
Smashed it.
So I will tell you, it would have been a great night to employ a contrarian betting style, because I bet you there were a lot of overs being played, because the totals in these games are so low in preseason games. They're like in the mid-30s. And so I'm sure the average bettor, by the way, I have friends that love betting preseason. I don't think it's much of an opportunity. I never have. And I haven't bet preseason football in years. It's not that I haven't ever done it, because, yes, I have issues and I have done it before, but I've not done it in a while. But last night, out of the 6 games that were played, every single one of those games went under the total. And I guarantee you books probably needed the unders last night in the preseason. I'm guessing they did. Anyway, did you watch any preseason football last night?
I was incapacitated last night, so I did not get to see.
That sounds terrible.
Well, I did not get to see any, but I did hear Drew Aller and Fernando Mendoza had quite interesting nights. Curtis Rourke as well.
Who's Curtis Rourke again?
The quarterback before Mendoza for Indiana.
Oh, that Curtis Rourke. Who does he
Yes.
play for? I don't even know who he plays for.
Great question. I saw Indiana fans tweeting about getting able to watch Curtis Rourke last night. They were very excited.
Well, I'm always interested. Here's what I'm interested in preseason. First of all, any injuries that come out of it. Injuries and player acquisitions, as I've said many times before, those are the two real significant things any of us learn during this time of the year. But I'm always interested to see which teams play starters versus those that don't. Like Joe Burrow played last night for Cincinnati. He was 5 of 6. Kirk Cousins played last night. He was 5 of 6 with a touchdown pass. He is apparently going to be the starter in Vegas. Jordan Love played last night. Jacoby Brissett played last night. And then there were other teams that did not play starters. The 49ers didn't play any starters. The Titans did. Cam Ward was out there for a couple of series. He got 12 pass attempts in. I don't know what the plan is tonight. I'm going to guess, this is just a guess, I'm going to guess that the starters are going to be out there for a series, and that's it. That's just a guess. Ben will have a better guess when he's on with us. Last night looked like a preseason scoreboard. 16-14, 19-13, 13-13. You know, I was wrong about the I forgot. There's no overtime in preseason NFL football. I forgot about that. They do not play overtime in the preseason. So the Colts and the Patriots played to a 13-13 tie last night. I think this is like maybe the second or third year of no overtime in the preseason. I forgot that when I said that Carolina decided last week to just go for the win against Arizona rather than kick to force overtime. They would have been kicking to tie the game. So that's the good news. You know, you're only going to get 4 quarters. You're not going to get a 5th quarter tonight. We will talk about tonight and find out what is important to all of you when it comes to preseason game number 1. It was nice to see football back on TV. I did kind of flip around. You know, the Steelers and the Packers were on. No one was playing in that game. And then that was followed by, on the NFL Network, that was followed last night by the Titans and the Niners in that game. I kind of like Cam Ward, not because of anything that happened last night, more so because of the Netflix series and what I thought of him coming out of Miami. You know who's terrible? And again, it's not about last night, but I did catch him taking a few snaps. Will Levis is terrible.
Damn.
He's horrible.
He's like a cartoon character every time he steps onto the field. Something cartoonish happens to him every time.
Yeah. I mean, he's got one of those big bodies, big arms, but I don't know what's between the ears. Curtis Rourke, by the way, plays for the 49ers, if you were wondering. Yeah, Mendoza apparently looked really good. The Raiders offense, they had their starters out there, or some of them with Kirk. Bowers wasn't out there. I was looking to see if he completed any passes to him. They went right down the field, scored. Then Mendoza came in and engineered a couple of drives. I saw some of the highlights. Mendoza, going back to Indiana last year, I know that there's some discussion about him learning how to play under center, more NFL style football, which is what the Clint Kubiak offense is. It comes straight from, you know, the Kevin O'Connell, Sean McVay, you know, Kyle Shanahan tree, Mike Shanahan tree with some Grudens mixed in there. Always have to mention that as well. But I think Mendoza is going to be a good quarterback in the NFL. He's big. He's smart. He's got great feel. He throws so accurately, or at least he did in college. Typically, that isn't something that you regress on or even improve significantly on. I remember Mike Shanahan telling me many, many years ago, there are a couple of things about quarterback play that you can coach up to a certain level, but if they don't have it naturally, they'll never be great at it. He said accuracy is one. If you don't have the accuracy naturally, you can coach with technique into, you know, something that's near average. And he said throwing with anticipation is 100. He said, well, not 100%, but he said for the most part, it is natural. It's innate. And if you're not good at it coming out, you can coach it up to being average, but you'll never coach it up to being great. Yeah, so I think he's got all that. Mendoza does. All right, start thinking about, you know, for the purposes of a call segment here in the opening hour of the show, what do you want to see tonight? What are you hoping to see? Preseason game number 1 in Landover. The Dolphins are in town. Do we know what uniforms they're wearing? I'm kidding. It'll be some burgundy and gold mixture, like the old uniforms are back, if you didn't know that. Back to Peter's note to me. I'll read it again. Kevin, I'm the PR consultant that used to write you during the Snyder days. On a PR damage scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being the worst, this was an 11. Disastrous. You had a sense of how bad it was on your show today, but as a PR person for 30 years, I knew it was way worse. This was, as you said, unforced, self-inflicted, and whomever was responsible for it better learn from it and understand the damage they did to Jaden yesterday. The LSU fan base isn't that forgiving, and if he doesn't play well this year, our fan base isn't very forgiving. I still can't figure out what they were trying to achieve, but the reaction was so predictable. No turning the clock back on this one. So, Pete, the PR guy, I do remember you. I remember you used to write all the time during the Snyder years. And I think for the most part, I agree with you. I disastrous 11 on a scale of 1 to 10. It was bad. I mean, the reaction, I'm sure at this point, most of you have followed what the reaction was. The LSU fan base is pissed. The NFL people all over the country thought it was petty, small, soft. Yes, there are some people taking the side of Jaden with respect to the number and why is Joe Burrow's number not protected? Let me just get one thing out real quickly because I'm a big college football fan and I'm a big Jaden Daniels fan. Joe Burrow and Jaden Daniels are not equal. Okay, Joe Burrow, Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, they won a national championship. And Joe Burrow had the single greatest season any quarterback's ever had in the history of college football, numbers-wise and otherwise. Now, with that said, his number isn't retired because they don't retire numbers. And my sense is if somebody had committed to a player that was as highly ranked as Pickett was coming out, and that player wanted to wear number 9, I have a feeling they would have probably said, sure. Brian Kelly kind of started all this. I'll get to Jaden's mother, the family in a second, adding to what I said yesterday. But Brian Kelly is the guy that sort of started this by cutting the deal with DJ Pickett, whereby Pickett was promised number 5 if he signed with LSU. And what did I say Kiffin? I meant
no.
Brian Kelly.
I have Lane Kiffin talking about it from last week and this week.
Yeah. We can play that in a second. But that was yesterday. We can play it here in a second. But let me just say, Brian Kelly's the one that cut the deal with DJ Pickett, and then Brian Kelly, because he coached Jaden Daniels, realized last year, man, you know what? I promised this, but I got to get him to wear another number. I don't want him to wear Jaden's number this quick, even though it's not retired. And so he talked him into wearing another number last year. But Brian Kelly's gone, and Lane Kiffin comes on, and now the kid who's got the contract with the school, the NIL deal, he committed, he wants number 5, and Lane Kiffin said, I didn't cut this deal. I'm just, as the head coach, living up to the deal. And Brian Kelly may have talked the guy out of it last year, but that's not for me to do. Here's what Lane Kiffin said. By the way, you've got the Lane Kiffin from a few days ago because that soundbite from Kiffin talking about this wasn't from yesterday. It was from like 3 or 4 days ago. That's the one you have, Max?
We'll play this one, and then I've got a second one. So we'll
play that one. It should be the longer one.
DJ is in 5, and that was a situation that was promised to him in recruiting here for him to sign here. And I've done a lot of research on that with the family and the representatives and the people. And so really, I didn't have a decision to make. It was promised to the kid. It wasn't done for whatever. I'm not going to get into that. I'm not going to judge something that I wasn't here of. But when a kid's promised something to come to school, he should wear it. And so at that point, I don't really think that's my decision. Should be honored what he was told. And so he's wearing it.
Yeah, he's wearing it now. And by the way, the kid came out yesterday and said, I've been wearing this number since I was a kid. I'm wearing the number. The father said, my kid's wearing number 5. Sorry. Look, there's been a lot that's been said and written. And I mean, it really obviously blew up in a very poor way for my guy, who I really believe, and I do, I just don't think that this was him driving this, activity over the last couple of days. I don't. I think he is what we think he is. Great kid. The opposite of self-absorbed. Great work ethic, great player, and he's going to prove it this year. I can't imagine that he's thrilled with what happened yesterday. The statement that he put out with the team's help, I thought was a good one. I know I said yesterday on the show, don't say anything. At this point, you guys have screwed the pooch. This is now, damage control, and damage control starts with shutting the hell up and hoping that once the games start, this kind of goes away. But they did put out a statement. Jaden put out a statement on Instagram, and I'm sure that the team probably, helped him with this. And I thought it was a solid statement. So I when I saw it, I'm like, okay, this is what I think people want to hear. There was one nit to pick, which I'll mention, but he wrote, I have been locked in on training camp, and that's been my number one focus. I have a lot of gratitude for my time at LSU, and I'm proud of what my teammates and I accomplished there. Obviously, there are issues to be worked out between my team and LSU, and my hope is that it will get done privately. My sole personal focus is on Commanders football. I realize the business of football is unique, and I trust that this can all be resolved. I think that was a solid statement from Jaden. The issue that I would, the nit to pick is that, when he says that my hope is that this will get done privately, that horse left the barn when his mother or whomever it was close to Jaden, the spokesperson, went to ESPN and gave him the whole story and gave him quotes. And more likely than not, leaked the cease and desist letter as well. I don't know that for sure. We do know that they went to ESPN because they're quoted. The team spokesperson, Jaden's spokesperson, was quoted. So the chances of any of this getting resolved privately anymore, that's over. You guys blew that. I actually had somebody yesterday call me and just say, why do you guys continue to blow things up that aren't a big deal? And I said, well, we didn't blow anything up. We didn't initiate anything. He used the word initiate. Why do you initiate things and then blow it up? Is that the only way you can get listeners? And I said, well, we didn't initiate anything. The family did. The family did by going to ESPN and telling ESPN how hurt they were, profoundly disappointed and disrespected they felt by the number being given to another player, and then leaked the cease and desist letter. I mean, anybody on that side, grow up, okay? We didn't make this up. Nobody made this up. This was there when we all woke up yesterday morning. Had Mark Schlabach on the show yesterday. Yeah, the idea that, and I like the statement from Jaden. And by the way, my sense of it is he's like, bad day. Hopefully he has the ability to talk to the people responsible for this, to say it's now time for you to move out, not as a mother or an agent, or not as a family member or a friend, whomever was responsible for it, but I'm a professional football player, and I'm playing for a professional football team, and it's a big business, and they're relying on me. And this was an unnecessary distraction, a total self-inflicted, unforced error on our part. There was a way to do it if he was really upset, and it would have been to approach it privately with LSU. Now, it's possible that something would have gotten out. Maybe LSU would have put something out eventually, if it had really gotten ugly between the two parties. I'm not even so sure this is something that Jaden cares about at a high level as much as the people around him care about it. He might, and he might feel profoundly disrespected by it. But guess what? You don't play for LSU anymore. You're in the NFL. You play for Washington. You lost your left tackle last week. And we're talking about jersey number 5 at your college. You guys need to get it together, because this is a massive season coming up for Jaden Daniels and this football team, and a lot of people who are employed by this football team. Huge season. I'm telling you, I don't think it was him. I just don't. I think most of you probably have the same thought. And hopefully this was kind of a wake-up call that the person or the people responsible are not him. They're not a part of LSU football. They're not a part of the team in terms of how the team runs and anything like that. And I'm not suggesting that they've been that way. But big boy league, grown men, they have to do it themselves. They have to advocate for themselves. Agents aren't there to do what happened yesterday. They're there to protect from what happened yesterday from happening. So, not a good day, but here's the part that I would disagree with Peter on. Everything in the moment seems disastrous. It seems catastrophic. I had somebody sort of close to the whole thing yesterday describe it as a catastrophic day for Jaden Daniels. And I said, yes, but he's a good kid. Good. Let me rephrase. He's a good grown man, adult. He has an unbelievable work ethic, and he's a phenomenal player. Once the games start, this can absolutely be a distant memory. I have a feeling it won't be as much of a distant memory for the LSU fan base. That makes me upset that that it's possible that there's been a separation between him and his alma mater where he achieved great things they did together. What an offense that was in 2023. I mean, as great as Joe Burrow's season was, and it was the greatest season statistically and otherwise in the history of college football, I said it during that season when we were doing shows. I think I'm watching one of the greatest college quarterbacks I've ever watched, ever. And Jaden didn't have a defense like Burrow did. Now, Burrow's defense wasn't great either, but Jaden's defense was horrific. If it had been a bad defense instead of a horrific defense, they probably would have been in the playoff and had a chance to compete for a national championship. But they didn't, and he was outstanding, and he was deserving of the Heisman Trophy. And quite honestly, from a gripe standpoint with respect to number 5, I kind of get it. Like, this is something that if it's important to you, it's important to you. If Brian Kelly told you that he was going to protect it, and he went back on his word, or Lane Kiffin did on Brian Kelly's word, I understand you might be hurt, but you're a professional quarterback now. You got a big season coming up. Huge season. That's got to be the focus, not this crap. The Eagles on September 13th. That has to be the only thing that matters to him. And if it's not what matters to the people around him, they have to figure out a way to keep those people down until we get to the season. No more of this crap. Self-inflicted at a major level. Catastrophic, disastrous, I don't know. I think somebody like Jaden can overcome almost anything. I do. And I think all he's got to do is focus on football. But this better be a lesson learned for the people around him. That was not bright. To not understand, as Pete, the PR guy, said, what the reaction was going to be. I sat here yesterday morning, a couple of hours after that story came out, and I said, this is an unforced error from a public relations standpoint. This is not going to go well for him today. I don't think even as Peter said, I don't think I knew the backlash, especially from the LSU fan base. In terms of all the he said, she said, the cease and desist letter, how it got out. I mean, anybody that actually thinks that this wasn't about the jersey number and it's more about truly protecting his name, image, and likeness, when they essentially gave this story to ESPN, which was almost all about the jersey number, if you can't connect those dots, I can't help you. It will open up a whole conversation about what is protectable and what isn't. I don't know how the hell you get Jaden, out of LSU's memorabilia, out of their team photos, out of their team videos. He's a part of their history. It's stupid that universities don't retain the, rights almost in perpetuity. Now, I'm not talking about being able to advertise and generate revenue with just Jaden in his LSU uniform, but it's a part of the whole pitch, the history. LSU football's been around for a lot longer than any of us or Jaden Daniels' family. You think that fan base is going to kowtow to Jaden's family on this when there's a good player to be had to go beat Bama this year? All right. Let's talk about football. They play Miami tonight. What is important to you tonight with this first preseason game as a 3.5-point underdog? I don't get that, but whatever. 301-230-0980. I'll give you my top 3 things for tonight that I am looking and hoping to see. Max will as well, and then I want your number one. What's the thing you're hoping to see? And obviously, the most important thing is nobody gets hurt. These games, usually people get hurt. Nobody gets hurt. That's the number one goal. That being understood, what would you like to see in addition to that? 301-230-0980. Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980 and the team980.com. What do I
Cavalli trying
got?
to finish off 8 innings for the first time in his big league career. Here's the set. 3-2 pitch to Conforto is on the way. Strike 3 called over the outside corner, and Cavalli lets out a scream. He has finished off 8 scoreless innings on 1 hit. He has 10 strikeouts for the 4th time in his career. A masterpiece from Cade Cavalli here this afternoon.
Dave Jagler with the call. Charlie Slows was on the call yesterday as well. The Nats snapped their 2-game losing skid to the Cubs, beat the Cubs 7-0, and Cade Cavalli was lights out. Took a no-hitter into the 7th inning, went 6 2/3 before he gave up his lone hit. He retired the first 15 batters before walking the only batter he walked in the performance. He was incredible. Struck out 10. He ended up walking 2 in the game and gave up that 1 hit. That was it. Gave way to Beater, the relief pitcher, in the 9th. That would have been pretty cool had he taken that no-hitter a little bit further. Just looking for some levels of excitement. And look, C.J. Abrams has had a year. James Wood has had a year. Obviously, Nunez and some of the other players that have really emerged. But Cade Cavalli, Foster Griffin, for a while, he's no longer with us. But Cade Cavalli has really had a major breakout season. He's 10-5 now on the season. His ERA drops to 3.36. And he is really moving forward at the top of the rotation. For now, good win for the Nats. Believe it or not, even with some of the losses recently in the wild card race, 3 games below 500 at 60 and 63. They're only 5 games out, and there are only 4 teams in front of them to get to that wild card spot. And they play several of those teams, including Miami, St. Louis. So we'll see. I don't think they're going to do it. I think it's a long shot. God, you look at the American League, basically everybody except for 3 teams are within 3.5 games of a playoff spot. All right, 301-230-0980, 301-230-0980. What do you want to see tonight in the matchup between Washington and Miami? And I guess if you have any other follow-up to what was not a great day for the Jaden Daniels team yesterday from a PR standpoint, you can weigh in on that as well. I know many of you would like to weigh in on that. So 301-230-0980. We'll sort of go open phones for almost anything that you want to talk about here for a bit. So my number one, injuries aside, get everybody in and out and get them in and out healthy. I'd really like to see the starting offense with Jaden out there on the field with their new offensive coordinator, David Blau, calling plays in, a situation in which you're in a real stadium with referees, with a clock, with fans, full uniforms, no yellow jersey on the quarterback. I don't need to see it for a full quarter or a half, a series or 2, no more. But don't waste what is a rehearsal opportunity that is as close to the real thing as you can get this time of year. It's not the real thing, obviously, but it's as close to the real thing as you can get. David Blau's never called plays in an actual real game or even a preseason game, I don't believe. I'd like to see them not waste these opportunities to, iron out any sort of kinks in the operation. One of the things that when you talk to, NFL offensive guys and you talk quarterbacks, it's amazing how many times an NFL person will say, just got to get him to the point where he can get us in and out of the huddle into the line of scrimmage on time. The operation pre-snap is so crucial to everybody. They're not out there winging it. They're not drawing plays up in the sand. This is very, very rehearsed, scripted. Calling the plays isn't necessarily easy. Getting them into your helmet, repeating them to the huddle, getting up to the line of scrimmage before the clock hits 15 seconds and your communication with your OC or your head coach, whoever's calling the plays, breaks off. But plenty of time to see the defense, adjust to the defense. It's a big deal. And a lot of young quarterbacks and a lot of veteran quarterbacks, it's always a concern. Sometimes the guy that's playing more than the guy that isn't necessarily that much better, but he's the guy that can keep the trains running on time. He's the guy that can get him in it, get the play, repeat it in a way in which everybody understands it in the huddle and gets up there and has plenty of time to do what they've been coached to do pre-snap. So I'd like to see that. I don't want to see week one at the Link, at 4:35 p.m. when they have their first offensive possession after they stop the Eagles on a 3-and-out. Wishful thinking, maybe. And have them, hustling to the line of scrimmage and Blau's over there going, come on, what are we doing here? Let's get the whole thing ironed out. I'd like to see that. That's number one. Number two, the obvious, next would be I want to see that from Durante Jones. So, yeah. Now, we're going to get Blau and Jones calling plays the entire game. But I want them to call plays with the players that are going to be in the game against Philadelphia, at least for a series or two. So I'd like to see the same thing defensively, especially with the player that they believe will be the player that they are communicating with. The players offensively, that would be obviously Jaden Daniels. And then defensively, there's a chance it could be Sonny Styles, or it could be it's going to be a linebacker. I think we heard that from Dan Quinn a few weeks ago. But whether it's Sonny Styles or it's Leo Chenal or it's Frankie Louvu, whoever that is, I'd like to see that. I want to see the two coordinators feel like they've been through a few rehearsals with the players that are going to be on the field with them on September 13th. So that's number two. Same thing that I wished for offensively, I want to see defensively. And then lastly, I am just interested in seeing and hopefully seeing a pace and an energy level that says we're hungry. We had a terrible season last year. It doesn't matter that this is a preseason game. Roster spots 1 through 90. Anybody that's playing, anybody with a weird jersey number tonight, I want to see a level of urgency and high motor and hitting on defense that says they're, being coached right now to perform. There's got to be a level that did not exist last year. The communication stuff is going to be hard with all the different players on the field. They're going to be miscommunications. It's going to be impossible, or let me just say it's not going to be impossible, but I think it's going to be unfair if there are delay of game penalties or if there's miscommunications with players that may not be playing when we get to the regular season or may not be playing with the players they'll be playing with when we get to the regular season. But I want to see errors made at full speed. That's what I want to see. I want to see the hustle and any mistakes made going full speed. Those are the three things I'd like to see tonight. The coordinators, 1 and 2, both getting an opportunity with some of their starters and the key people they'll be communicating with when we get to the Eagle game. And then 3, I want to see relentless, high energy, high motor, big hitting from everybody on the field. By the way, that goes for special teams too. Max, what do you hope to see tonight?
All right, so number one, my big thing that I'm going to be watching, it's just the young guys. He's like Sonny Styles. If he gets, see how much he plays, see how much run Antonio Williams gets. I'm really interested to see how they perform on the field and just kind of projecting forward. Number two, the offensive line. Can they block? Can they keep Marcus Mariota? Because I don't know if Jaden's going to play tonight, but can they keep Marcus Mariota upright? Can they give him time? Can they do what they need to do? Because I know that it's going to get rough once we get into the season. So that's also what I'm going to be looking for. The number 3, I know Durante Jones isn't going to be making a ton of defensive, like crazy defensive calls or adjustments, or he's not going to be showing too much. But one thing I do want to know is, can our DBs stick and cover? I need to see how we fare on the back end, because it's been trouble the past 2 years, and I'm worried about it being trouble this year. I want to see a lot of these floor raisers like Rasul Douglas just play well. So that's kind of what I'm looking for tonight.
Okay. I like all of those things. I will say that, the coverage thing, because you're not going to see starters for very long,
Right.
and you're not game planning. So,
Exactly.
how they play Miami tonight in the scheme, and it's more about technique. It's more about, do you see guys getting beat over and over again? I think that at this time of year, the communication stuff can be overrated. I think the special team stuff can be overrated. I remember getting into a discussion with B. Mitch one day in the bullpen at the old place. And he said, no, you can learn a lot about your team's special teams in preseason. And I'm like, but how? The players that end up playing special teams in the regular season don't play special teams except for the kickers and the holders in preseason. And he's like, you can get a sense of how they're being coached. And so anyway, all right, 301-230-0980, 301-230-0980. Open phones here for a bit. We do have a guest coming on at 11, but then we'll get back to your calls as well. But Anthony, Rob, Cam, Bobby, Pat, Ryan, stay on hold. What do you want to see? What are you looking for tonight? Also, if you have any, lingering thoughts about the PR debacle yesterday, initiated and carried out by the Jaden Daniels team, you can weigh in on that as well. Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980 and the team980.com. All right. Open phones here for a bit. We'll have a Miami guest on at 11, and then we'll get back to your calls. So hang in there with us. Anthony, kick it off for us. What do you want to see tonight?
Good morning, Kevin. How are you?
What's up, man?
I'm good. So, listen, I apologize. I was on hold yesterday for almost an hour, and I had to hang up because I had to go back to work. But anyway, that aside, I want to circle back to yesterday, and you are absolutely correct. What happened with Jaden Daniels and his family in LSU and his number business, that was an unforced error. And what troubles me the most is it smells like a RG3, a reincarnation, man.
It doesn't to me. I don't like that comp. I said yesterday this is going to give a lot of people RG3 vibes because of the family involvement, etc. I've said this from day one. Jaden, football-wise, is nothing like RG3. Yeah, their rookie seasons were comparable. Jaden is a much more advanced and polished quarterback than RG3 was as a young player. And personality-wise, I don't think they could be more different. Jaden's an introvert, and obviously RG3 isn't.
Yeah, you're right. JD5 is an introvert, but I just wish that his family had not done what they did, because that certainly puts me, it took me right back to RG3.
Hopefully they learned something here. If they were trying to, if the thought was Jaden's, God's gift to football, and that's kind of their MO, and that everybody was going to back Jaden on this, from the LSU fan base to the Washington fan base to NFL fans to college football fans. Hopefully they learned a lesson here, that he is an NFL football quarterback who had one great season and a very rough season last year, mostly because he didn't play football, and that, he's just in his third year. And I think the Joe Burrow comparisons are not really, it's not necessarily for me to make. I'm not an LSU fan, but LSU fans made it pretty clear that they're really not one and the same. One won a national championship. They don't, Jaden was beloved, no doubt, and his name is in the rafters or on the stadium as one of the 3 Heisman Trophy winners. And that season was spectacular to watch him, but they only won 7 games. Joe Burrow had the greatest single season in the history of college football. They went undefeated and won a national championship. So he and Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson and the players that were a part of that are going to have a special place in the hearts and minds of LSU fans because they won.
Yes, sir. I accept that, and I agree with everything you just said. But moving forward, tonight, I want to see that offense with Mr. Blau, and I'm hoping that they at least I hope that the starters get to play at least 1 or 2 series, so I can, we can kind of get a glimpse of what we should expect when we line up against Philadelphia on September 13th. Secondly, that defense with that boy Sonny Styles, oh my goodness, I think that boy he's gonna be a beast. I think he's gonna be like a Lawrence Taylor. That's what I think. That's what I'm looking for.
Not the first to make the comparison on this show.
Another Sonny Styles LT comp. You must be hanging out with Mark and Largo. Let's go to Rob in D.C. Rob, what do you want to see tonight?
Can you hear me?
Rob, I got you.
Hello. All right,
you're on.
So my first, let's start football. So tonight, we need to see plays being made on the defensive side. Defense has had a turnover issue for years. I would love to see a couple of turnovers today. Guys flying to the ball, just seeing what Durante Jones and his defense looks. Hopefully it looks similar to what Minnesota had, with guys playing aggressive and flying around to the ball. Also on the offensive line, watching guys playing tonight, they probably will have to play this season. Linemen get hurt all year. We already at left tackle deficit. We also have a skin group of guys at center. So seeing those guys and seeing how they protect and move on the O-line is very important. And just in general, watching the guys, their attitude, seeing how they move in offense, we don't need any delay games, any type of operation issues. Seeing that stuff move smoothly will be very reassuring. But on the JD side, myself, I work with a sports group. I'm gonna tell you first of all, it was direct malpractice with the timing. The worst timing you can have going into the season
Yes.
when he didn't perform well last year. For my guys, we would this is not the right time. It's something that probably should have happened in February. But to the point of with Jaden and what happened was with the name, image, and likeness, and you talking about the licensing issues with the school and the bookstores. When you sell a number 5 jersey in the bookstore, who names goes on the back of it? So you're talking about revenue that comes out of his team's pocket, out of his. So this is a lawyer thing where that was something where they probably went into the season with Brian Kelly saying last year they probably came into the season asking, "Hey JD, can we use this and sell this jersey in the bookstore with Pickett name on the back of the jersey?" And they're like, "No." And then this year, Lane Kiffin comes in, and they're like, "Well, we're not going to ask you guys. We're just going to go into it." They send JD a letter saying, "Hey, look, when number 5 jerseys get sold in the bookstore, it won't have your name on it. His team's going to send out a message and say, no, you cannot do that unless we want to take you to court first. So any jersey that's sold in the bookstore that has number 5 on it, we will have to get some type of revenue from it." And this is where the legal side of the college game comes into, and this is where the CBA, the college football and college sports athletics needs a CBA. And as a person who works with these players, I don't work with the legal side.
Yeah, look, you're getting into the weeds here, and I appreciate it. And I think that it is more complicated. And I said as much yesterday, which is, there may be some legal validity to the cease and desist letter. But there's no court ultimately, if it reached this, that is going to require LSU to erase Jaden Daniels from its history. It's just, that's not what's going to end up happening. I had Howard Gutman on with me yesterday on the podcast. What we might end up having is literally it parsed out, like team photos, team videos, etc. But jersey numbers cannot be, protected in perpetuity. The university owns that jersey number, and they can give it out and they can label it anything they want to label it at. Now, selling it with Jaden's number on the name on the back, that's for somebody much smarter than I to figure out. Let's go to Cam. Cam, what are you hoping to see tonight?
Yeah, what's up, Kevin? How you doing?
Good, Cam.
You took my thunder, so I want to see Jones and Blau call a game. But even though I know they're not going to game plan, I hope they at least show a little bit of what their offense and what their defense looks like. Because, we've heard so much that, that Blau's going to have some Ben Johnson trades, some Kingsbury trades, his own trades. Obviously, we think Jones is going to have the Minnesota trades, and it's good. Like, it's a good hypothesis, but if we can, I would like to confirm the hypothesis. Like, even if it's a linebacker who's going to be working at Walmart next month, I want to see him showing blitz, not blitzing, or not showing blitz and blitzing, something like that.
You really do. You want to see what he is planning on doing in the regular season tonight?
Not full scale, but kind of just. I feel like what we heard, what the offensive defense is going to be based off where they came from, it's just an assumption. We really don't know, and I don't want to wait until September. So I'm just being a little impatient.
Yeah, I can wait until the 13th to see scheme, to see planning, the whole thing. But I do want to see tonight a level of high motor, high intensity, making mistakes full speed. I mean, I know that is coach speak. You want to see somebody make a mistake, but you want to see him making it at full speed with great hustle. But I think it's funny. I'm remembering that first preseason game from Quinn's first year, and it didn't go well from the standpoint of like real hustle. In that opening preseason game, it was against the Jets. Remember, that was the game in which Jaden sort of checked at the line of scrimmage and threw the deep ball to Diami, right? It was to Diami, I'm pretty sure. But I remember saying, I want to see a little bit more hustle defensively. And, maybe that was an indication of what was to come. But last preseason, I actually thought they really were flying around defensively. Thank you, Rob. All right. Stay on hold. I'm trying to move. We're trying to move the guests back, so we may take your calls next segment. If not, we'll get back to it after we talk to somebody from South Florida. Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980, the team980.com. Don't forget, you can watch this show on our Team 980 YouTube channel. From Tom. Tom writes, if the Commanders had a sense of humor, they would announce today that they are retiring Jaden's number 5 jersey. Yeah, they're not going to do that. That would just bring more attention to the situation. It would show a sense of humor, yes, but I think right now they'd love to just have this thing with the statement that they probably were a part of helping Jaden to make on Instagram yesterday. They'd like the games to begin and let it, happen, as quietly as it can with LSU, but have him totally focused on Washington football and putting his name eventually 10, 15 years up into the rafters of the new stadium, his number between Sonny Jurgensen's and Sammy Baugh's as they retired. It wouldn't be between, I guess, because it would come before if they were doing it numerically. But if they were doing it chronologically, it would come after Sonny's in terms of the quarterbacks. All right. 301-230-0980. We've got a guest coming on at 11:25 from Miami, and we'll talk about what they saw from the joint practice as well. Bobby in North Carolina. Bobby, go ahead.
Thanks for taking my call, Kevin. I'll be AWOL for about a week next week. I'll leave Sunday for the Bahamas, so if you don't hear from me, life is good down there playing blackjack. All right.
Good for you. Good for you.
I wish you were beside me next week.
Yeah, we'd have some fun. I might be making a trip out to a certain part of the desert in about a week and a half for a couple of days. I'll keep you posted on that.
I look forward to leaving Sunday. But anyway, yesterday's news, Kevin, I think you tweeted about this yesterday, and I did too. I'm just so ready for the 13th of September. I'm just ready for football. All this other BS, I'm just over it. It is what it is. I'm ready for football. That being said, the schedule early for us is brutal, tough. We need to be ready to go. We've been willy-nilly on this preseason for year after year after year. I know he's not going to play anybody tonight, I'm sure. I've already reading a few things. He's not going to play many starters, but I think offense needs to play a couple series. Defense definitely needs to play because we got a bunch of new faces. You got 2 new coordinators. I mean, I just don't see, and you come off a 5-win season, Kevin. Normally I say don't play, get ready for the regular season, but Kevin, we better hit the ground running September 13th. You and I both know the schedule is brutal early on. 2 road games, 2 divisional games. We got to be ready to play. We don't need any excuses. And I just feel like they need to play tonight. I know they won't be scheming, and I understand that part, but let them play. Let Jaden get behind center and take live bullets from a different team and let all these new guys on defense play because I'm intrigued about the team speed that I've been reading about for weeks now. I want to see that team speed tonight on TV, come off the screen. But I know we're not going to let them play probably, but I just think we need to.
Back to just the first thing you said. I understand that sentiment, but let's not miss the forest for the trees on this one. Maybe that's not the right saying for this, but if they don't learn, the people involved in making this so public over the last couple of days, if they don't learn from it and it happens again, that's the part that I'm concerned about, and I bet you others are concerned about it too. He's a grown man. He's employed by a big business, and there isn't room for family to be a part of that on a day-to-day basis or in the PR ether. Like, this needs to be lesson learned because this was damage to him yesterday, a big distraction. Of course, it's overcomable, in my opinion, because of him. But we don't want to see this become, something that ends up rearing its ugly head over and over again. Because yesterday was a major unforced, self-inflicted PR error that, that damaged him and his reputation. Nobody's ever said the things that they've said about Jaden Daniels before yesterday. And he'll overcome it. I have no doubt he will. But the lesson needs to be learned about the involvement and the delusion of what he is right now to everybody in the NFL and two specific fan bases, LSU and Washington. There's a lot for him to accomplish. He hasn't gotten there yet. That's, I hope that is, I bet you there was a bit of of shock in their camp that it went the way it did. And that's where I would say, then don't do it without professionals being involved in helping you do it. Because that was just an absolute picking up a brick and smashing your own head with it yesterday. That was dumb. High level dumb. With respect to what you said about the game tonight, I want to see some flying around. I want to see the coordinators out there like you do. Ryan, go ahead. Did you want to say something, Bobby?
Yeah, one more thing, Kevin. Hold on. What scares me is the way this thing was yesterday. What's going to happen a year from now when he's trying to renegotiate a contract?
Oh, brother.
And you know what's coming. You already know what's coming because she's
Well,
involved.
I hope he makes it. I hope he makes it easy. I hope he makes it easy by going out and having a massive year, not only for himself, but for the team as well, that makes this an easy negotiation. I guess it's never easy. Thank you.
See you, man.
All right. Enjoy your trip. Ryan in Harrisonburg. Ryan, go ahead.
Hey, Kevin. Just a quick point, and I didn't realize until I was talking to Max that y'all had touched on this, but we don't know for a fact that it was Jaden's mom, but with what he had in Arizona, with them banning her being in commercials, her being his agent, it kind of, and Brandon Ayuk bringing up "don't hide behind your mom" comments.
We know it was, we know the spokesperson, we know the story with ESPN's Mark Schlabach came from a spokesperson for Jaden Daniels, and the quotes were about how the family feels. We look, there isn't a person in the LSU fan base that doesn't think this was his mother. We don't have as much experience. We've got 2 seasons, and they only had 2 seasons as well. So I guess the timing is right. But certainly it's not hard to connect the dots. And I'm not saying specifically it was just her, but obviously it was whomever was responsible for it. It was a major, major self-inflicted PR blunder, period. There's no other way to describe it. Totally unnecessary what they did.
Yeah. And like you brought up, it reeks of sensitivity. When Tommy had written a story and he got some legal repercussions from that.
Well, he didn't get any legal repercussions. He just, I'll let him explain it at some point. But basically,
sure.
He cut and pasted from a story from years ago when she was essentially banned from Arizona State for being involved in a number of things. He cut and pasted it into a column of his. Just did anybody know this about Jaden's mom? And he got, a call close to the parties involved that wanted to explain their side and wasn't very happy with what he wrote. And the fact of the matter is he didn't write it. Somebody else wrote it. But anyway, go ahead.
Gotcha. And that sort of proves the point of that sort of reeks of sensitivity as well.
Sure.
So let's, with the new ownership, I can't imagine that when this came out, Josh Harris, who just spent, $6 billion plus on a team, sees this and hopefully they step in and go, okay, we're going to take this, step aside, team, whoever did this, and the adults come in the room instead of it being a Snyder situation, which I don't think it will be. They're obviously a lot more competent than the previous ownership, which isn't a high bar, but hopefully they take this. It's a lesson learned, and it's going to be fantastic to see how they handle it. And hopefully this is a footnote. We go on, we have a great season, and this is just a blip, and it's not an all in for week 1 situation. Really.
Yeah. I mean, the kid, the young man appears to really have it all together. That's what I've heard from people very close to it. And that's the way I've gauged it from from my seat, and I think a lot of fans have as well. And by the way, if this was all about the family, and my guess it was, and probably certainly has his mom's fingerprints on it somewhere. It's not the first family. It's not the first father or the first mother to be involved and want to be more involved and try to control various narratives. But the bottom line is, and the team would tell you this is pro ball. This isn't college. This isn't Pee Wee. This isn't CYO. This is pro ball. This is business now. And he is one of 53, one of 90 right now. And he's not at a level in which, he's been anointed anything at this point and will handle, his professional growth. And as the agent, and she went and she's a certified agent, good for her. And I've heard she's very innately bright and obviously made a mistake yesterday. And I thought the Netflix show, I thought it was a bit much with her, but she's got personality. She's bright. It was a mistake yesterday, and it's time to focus only on this team here and the season that is coming up. No distractions, no self-inflicted errors from anybody, close to him. It's all about him and the team now. Thank you, Ryan. Did you have anything else?
Thank you.
Yeah. Philip in Texas.
Tonight,
Philip, go ahead. Philip,
Hello,
you're
good
on.
Morning. Thanks for taking my call, Kevin.
Sure.
I want to see a heavy dose of tight end play, especially with Yankoff.
Mm-hmm.
Man, it's time for him to get loose. And this dude was a defensive player. He played fullback, special team
Athlete.
tackler.
Yeah.
And I just saw highlights of him in college the other day. Like, wow, like Jesus Christ, he's been in number 3, number 4, right?
Yeah, no, this guy, they from the jump, everybody said this guy's a phenomenal, big, long, lanky, 6'4", 6'4.5", athlete that can do just about everything. Yeah.
So I want to see him. And as far as Jaden Daniels, it's like it's always something with this team. I love this team. I just want them to fix it quickly because we got better things, bigger things to handle. We got to make the playoffs, God willing, and it's all about that trophy, Lombardi Trophy. We can't have any more distractions anymore.
It's all about Philadelphia right now on the 13th.
Yep.
This was unnecessary. Thank you, Philip. Let's go to Ryland. Ryland, go ahead.
Hey, Kev.
Hey, Ryland.
What a time to be alive, buddy. Hey, nothing, man. So tonight, I'll tell you what I'm looking forward to. First and foremost are the cold football beers. Those are going to be nice and crispy tonight.
Mm-hmm.
But let's get some urgency out of the staff and start fast because you can't come off last season and not be hungry. But more importantly, come on, JD5, what are you doing? Not only is he giving RG3 some ammo, and now that guy's talking about him and the team and more distractions, but you couldn't have picked a worse time, of course. My in-laws, like I was telling Max, are all LSU. They're down from Shreveport, so they're all LSU fans, and they're Cowboys fans too, which makes them the worst breed of all breeds. But let me tell you, the Joe,
bad combination.
You can't get worse than you can't be a Shreveport LSU purple and gold Cowboys fan, but they are, and they do like the Bengals because of Joe. But you like you guys are saying, worry about the number 5 in the burgundy and gold next to Sonny's jersey. Like college is college. You go to college to play pro, and it's unfortunate because from the outside looking in, JD5 looks like this great guy, but it has his mom written all over it. And evidently she's been an issue in the past. So hopefully the leadership in the building can kind of help him get past that, but it'll be interesting to watch. But talk about pressure on a guy that didn't really need it. But this story that will be told will be starting on September 13th with Philly.
Yeah. I want to make one thing clear. Like, I don't really have an issue with some level of anger or hurt associated with it was promised to him that his number would be protected, and then all of a sudden it wasn't. it's how they chose to handle it, the timing around it, the quotes that were used in the ESPN story that I just knew when I read it yesterday and then read the cease and desist letter, this is not going to go well for him. And you could have pursued that in a much different way where, maybe we would have read a story. Ooh, that's kind of interesting. A cease and desist letter on name, image, and likeness. What's going on here? It certainly would have been some news, but making it about the jersey number, which is the story they gave to ESPN. Okay, we're not talking about who leaked something or who said something or who's pulling the Heisman Trophy replica or who isn't or who did ask for it. Who did. They gave the story to ESPN. And then certainly, the cease and desist letter was provided, I'm guessing, by them as well. Yeah, I mean, I don't have a massive issue with Jaden feeling a bit of a sting over his jersey number. But the way they decided to handle it and then public relations it was really the opposite of what they should have done. And the timing of it couldn't be worse. Now, I have a feeling he probably feels the same way and feels the sting of yesterday and feels probably as much of it from the LSU fan base as he does from anywhere else because he had two incredible seasons there. Incredible seasons. But again, I mean, I'm a college football fan. A lot of you are too. Burrow and Daniels aren't exactly equal. One won a national championship and had the greatest season in the history of college football. He and Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson and the players on that team will be revered in a way that Jaden can't be revered because he didn't win a national championship. They won 7 games or 8 games or whatever it was his year. Wasn't his fault, by the way. It was that they had no defense. But anyway,
that's where you can't put a number 5 and a number 9 jersey next to each other because he didn't win it all. And at the end of the day, football is about winning the game. And
yeah, I would have no issue if they protected or retired Jaden's jersey. He's certainly one of the greatest players to ever play for LSU, and the season that he had was just off the charts. But again, the way that it was handled and how they couldn't predict what the reaction would be, is why they shouldn't have been involved in the first place. I got to run, Rylan. Thanks. When we come back, we'll talk to Chris Perkins, who covers the Dolphins for the South Florida Sun Sentinel. Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980, the team980.com. Don't forget, all of our training camp and preseason Washington Commanders coverage on the Team 980 is presented by Xfinity. Score the most reliable Wi-Fi. One price, 5 years guaranteed. Xfinity. Imagine that. The Miami Dolphins are in town. No, this isn't Super Bowl 7 or Super Bowl 17. Remember, Washington and Miami, two teams that have matched up multiple times in a Super Bowl. There are only, I think, 4 other rematches in Super Bowls. Of course, that was a long time ago. Very long time ago. Miami in town with a new head coach, with a new quarterback, with a lot that's new. The guy that's with us right now is Chris Perkins. Chris is a columnist with the Sun Sentinel, and he joins us as I'm sure he's either in town or headed to town at Chris Perk on X. So I would just start with this. Like they strike me, the Dolphins do, along with, say, the Cardinals and the Browns, as 3 teams in the NFL, a league where almost anything can happen, where this year, Chris, it can't happen for them because they are in true rebuild mode. Is that a fair way to describe the Dolphins of 2026?
Oh, yeah, 100% fair there. And, I mean, look, this rebuild is one of the most thorough house cleanings that we've seen in recent NFL history. The GM, the assistant GM, most of the coaching staff, quarterback, the 2 receivers, Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, your 2 edge rushers, Jalen Phillips and Bradley Chubb, like everybody's gone. So, look, they decided to take the financial pain this year of the Tua contract and a bunch of others. Some of it they didn't have any choice. The dead money with Jalen Ramsey and Tyreek, but they decided to take the pain. So, yes, full rebuild mode. I think the number in Vegas is accurate. 4.5 is the over-under win total. I think they come in around 5 wins, but really the big thing is how they play, not the one-loss record.
What does Malik Willis look like so far? I mean, when you think about it, Chris, this time last year, if I said to you the number 1 free agent quarterback when we get to March is going to be Malik Willis, you would have had me checked into a padded room because no one would have thought that. But he had those games last year, played well, got himself a contract, is in Miami. What's it look like so far? What's the feeling about whether or not they got it right?
It's hard to say right now because, look, Malik is a 5th-year player who's a first-year starter, right? He was a reserve for 2 years in Tennessee. He was a reserve for 2 years in Green Bay. I wasn't a big fan of them signing Malik Willis. And we know that because John Eric Sullivan, the GM, and Jeff Hafley, the coach, spent the last 2 seasons with Malik in Green Bay, Malik Willis was running the scout team against Jeff Hafley, who was the defensive coordinator. So They know Malik Willis very well. Malik looks okay. If I had to put numbers on him right now before he even takes a snap in a preseason game, I would say maybe 20 touchdowns, 12 interceptions this season. If he could rush for like 600 yards, that would be a pie-in-the-sky season, considering his pass protection is shaky and his wide receivers are even worse than the pass protection. So Malik's not going to have a whole lot of help out there. I think realistically, he's probably a bit under that 2-to-1 touchdown to interception ratio you look for. Maybe he comes in around 18 and 12, something like that. But he doesn't have a whole lot of help out there. Aside from Devon Achane, the Pro Bowl running back, this offense has been stripped down.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask you. I mean, I'm wondering, much more obviously than Tua, Malik Willis is capable of being sort of a dual threat quarterback. Will we see any of that with, Achane in the backfield, who's as fast as anybody?
You know what's interesting? I think that we're not going to see Malik Willis's legs at full speed till the preseason opener on September 13th. And the reason that I say that is in the joint practice on Wednesday, right, it's no contact with the quarterback. So there's no real pass rush coming at Malik. There's no sense of urgency. You can sit back there for 4 or 5 seconds technically, and, nobody's going to take you to the ground. It's going to be the same thing tonight when he plays. You don't really take the head off of the starting quarterback in preseason games. You'll take a shot at the backup, the 2s against the 2s, but the 1s against the 1s, you're kind of respectful. So, again, no sense of urgency. So I don't think we're going to see Malik's full legs until the season opener. Having said that, though, they're going to be a factor because, again, the pass protection is shaky. Your receivers are even worse. Devon Achane is gonna take a lot of pressure off of Malik, but not in the passing situations where the coverage breaks down. And so I don't think we're going to see as many design runs for Malik as you see for like Lamar Jackson or maybe Josh Allen. But there will be some. But I think most of his carries are going to be out of passing situations as opposed to design runs until they figure out, does this guy know when to slide? Is he going to try and take on defenders like Jackson Dart or something like that? Until they really know what Malik is like in game situations, it's going to be pretty conservative, the read options and things.
The Dolphins had so many draft picks. They loaded up on picks in April. They've got, I think a bunch of picks next year as well. This is clearly a build for the future. But tell me what, I think it was 13 picks in the April draft. Who at this point are people excited about?
And look, the top of the draft looks really good for them right now. And I'll tell you the players, but the big thing that we don't know and the big reason that you want to see them tonight is it bad players going against bad players, right? Because the Dolphins are probably going to be like a 5-win team, like I said. But having said that, Caden Proctor, the first-round pick, is playing left guard. He's an offensive tackle. He's looked pretty good. The big fear, he was taken number 12. The Dolphins passed over Reuben Bain, the local kid from the University of Miami. He went 15 at Tampa. Did they make a mistake there? But I think Proctor is going to be good. The thing is, he has to be better than Reuben Bain. The number 27 pick, they had 2 picks in the first round, is cornerback Chris Johnson from San Diego State. He'll be the slot, probably play some outside. He looks pretty good. Jacob Rodriguez, second round, the linebacker from Texas Tech. What was he, 5th in the Heisman voting, but always around the ball, creates a lot of havoc. He's looked good. He's pushing for a starting position. They have a wide receiver, Caleb Douglas, in the 3rd round from Texas Tech. He's kind of shaky. He's got a lot of talent. He's got some drops. He's been inconsistent. And then the 2 linebackers in the 4th round, Trey Moore from Texas and Kyle Lewis from Pitt. They're also pushing for spots. Trey Moore, he can be an edge rusher or an inside backer, strong side backer. And then Kyle Lewis is more of the big nickel. He can defend tight ends like Brock Bowers and Trey McBride and those type of guys in the slot. So the top of the draft has looked good in training camp, but again, let's see what they look like tonight. And by the way, Chris Johnson will not play tonight. He's been banged up. He didn't practice on Wednesday, but all those other draftees should play tonight. So let's see what they look like.
Did you mention Jacob Rodriguez? And if not, just tell me, because he was one of my favorite players to watch last year in college football. I actually thought that he felt like a first-round pick and was surprised that he wasn't. He ended up going, early in the 2nd to Miami. I mean, you guys have a history, certainly, of some great, middle linebackers for sure. Zach Thomas being one, and there's some, comparisons there. What's Jacob Rodriguez been like so far?
He looked good. He's been disruptive, just like he was in college. He's probably gonna start. He's pushing Terrell Dodson, and Jacob would be the green dot guy, the guy who calls the plays. Terrell Dodson is a 5-year vet or whatever. 3 years ago, he led the team in interceptions. Granted, it was just 3. Last year, he was 2nd in tackles with like 125, and he had 5 sacks. But Jacob Rodriguez is probably going to start over Terrell Dodson. So Jacob Rodriguez has been really, really good. Another Dolphins inside linebacker, you mentioned Zach Thomas. Also Jordan Brooks, who's on the team now. He was all pro last year. He led the league in tackles at 183. He's another Texas Tech inside linebacker. He was a first-round pick for Seattle a few years ago. So, that's kind of the Jordan Rodriguez, Jacob Rodriguez lineage from Texas Tech to Dolphins linebackers. So big things are expected from him. I think he's going to have a really, really good year. That was a good pick.
What's the expectations on starters tonight?
I think probably 12, 15 snaps, maybe 2 possessions, whichever comes first. If they have like a 10-play drive on the first possession. That will probably be it. I think they really, really want to see kind of toughness from the players. Jeff Hafley is pushing a big toughness theme. Previously under Mike McDaniel, this was a pretty boy offense, finesse, the sprint relay team with, Tyreek and Devon Achane and Jalen Waddle, and it was speed. Hafley is pushing toughness. They want to run the ball. They want to be physical. They want to be tough in the trenches. So I think that's really what they want to see from the backups tonight is if you get punched in the mouth, are you going to punch somebody back? They want to transition from the Mike McDaniel finesse teams to some physical, aggressive alpha male football. So that's what they're going to be looking for tonight.
All right, Chris Perkins joining us. He's a columnist with the South Florida Sun-Sentinel. Switching subjects, just tell me real quickly what the vibe is about Giannis in Miami teaming up with Bam and Wiggins. LeBron didn't end up there. I thought there was a chance he was going to end up in Miami again. But what does everybody think about Giannis in Miami and the season that maybe the Heat can have next year?
Oh, look, people are excited. The LeBron thing was a disappointment because people were, really, really envisioning another version of a big three, but it didn't happen. But look, with Giannis, I think everybody knows how Pat Riley, Eric Spoelstra era Heat teams start with defense. And when you have Bam and Giannis, you've got a good basis for some really good defense. So that's what everybody's excited about. But look, everybody knows the deal also that the Heat is probably at best a 4 or 5 seed in the playoffs. That's at best. They still do need some better perimeter defense. They still do need some 3-point shooting, some backcourt help. So, we'll see what they get by the trade deadline because the Heat is always big with mid-season acquisitions. But look, it's better to have Giannis than not to have Giannis. So that was their huge offseason acquisition. I think LeBron would have just been a cherry on top because nobody really knew that he was going to become available. But good offseason, but they still have work to do if they're going to plan on being in the conference finals.
Switching subjects again, Darian Mensah from Duke goes to Miami to replace Carson Beck. By the way, you mentioned Ruben Bain. He was my favorite player for Washington in this draft. The short arm thing, maybe they're right, but the dude I thought other than Mendoza was the best player in college football last year. I thought Ruben Bain was. But what do the Canes look like this year with Mensah at quarterback? And coming off what was just a truly kind of exciting run to the championship game.
Man, the Canes are expecting to go back. They have a lot of talent, and it's a case of where you go from Cam Ward to Carson Beck, and now you've got Darian Mensah, and you think you can keep this thing going. You've got some talent out there. You've got Moten on the defensive line. You've got Mark Walton there at running back. Golly, and the receiver's name just escaped me, just went out of my head.
Malachi Tony, who might be the first player, or certainly a top 5 player picked in the 2028 draft.
Exactly. So these dudes are loaded once again. Mario Cristobal has this thing rolling right now. So obviously the big regular season game is against Notre Dame. They know they can't look past anybody, right, from the SMU Louisville.
Don't they have? It's
ago.
A pretty easy schedule, right, Chris? Right. I haven't looked at it, but I remember reading recently it's a pretty easy schedule until Notre Dame, right?
Yep. But they just had that lesson last year, so I would be shocked if they overlooked anybody this year. But it is. It's pretty much about Notre Dame and regular and playoff seeding. That's pretty much what it's about. But don't overlook anybody. That'll be a big test. And Mario Cristobal is the type of coach he's trying to keep his team grounded. He's kind of Saban-esque in that from that standpoint. He hasn't gone to the rat poison thing where all the good publicity is rat poison, but he's kind of trying to keep all the good vibes and all the positive stuff out of his team's head. That's very tough. Social media, conventional media, but it is pretty much about Notre Dame and playoff season.
At Clemson on October 3rd. So, on the road in Death Valley before a month later in South Bend, which could be one of the true Titanic games of the college football season coming up. That was fun. I'll tell you, I would sit here talking about him on occasion when we talk college football. I was really rooting for Carson Beck last year. I thought he got a raw deal off that injury at Georgia. I thought he was blamed for a bit too much. I thought he always looked like an NFL quarterback to me. And I'm curious as to, somebody who kind of covered him. Do you think he's an eventual starting quarterback in the NFL?
That's a good question. I'll say this. Carson Beck, he seems the type of quarterback that if you give him the tools, he can take advantage of it. And I think the same thing about Tua, but let's not talk about Tua. But Carson Beck, so there's a lot to be said for that. He's not on a team right now that has a whole lot, but he looked good the other night, right? I thought he looked very good from what he did. So is he a starter? I would say right now he would be a low-level NFL starter, somebody who would be maybe around number 20 in the league, 17 to 20 as a starter, which, that's nothing to sneeze at. That's probably, a 3 or 4 year run as a starter. But I don't see a Pro Bowl in his future right now as a rookie with one preseason game under his belt. But maybe he might be able to have a 3 or 4 year run as a starter.
Chris, thanks for doing this. Really appreciate it.
Anytime. Keep in touch.
Yep. At Chris Perk on X, a columnist for the South Florida Sun Sentinel. Malik Willis is going to be one of those interesting stories. He looked the part when he had to play in Green Bay, and I thought that was a good point. I hadn't thought about that Jeff Hafley, who was the defensive coordinator for LaFleur in Green Bay, had to go up against Malik Willis a lot in practice and training camp, and they went out and got him. And man, it looked like he had no chance of being an NFL quarterback 2 years ago, or just a year and a half ago. And then got the big deal and has a chance to do it with the Dolphins. All right. When we come back, the Wizards schedule came out yesterday, and they got some attention. We'll explain. Also, a thought or two on Russell Westbrook hanging it up. Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980 and the team980.com. The Wizards' schedule came out yesterday. I'll get to that in a moment. But Russell Westbrook announced his retirement 2 days ago. We were going to get to this yesterday. We never had a chance. 18 years in the NBA. And I have to say that Russell Westbrook is just going to be one of those players with a legacy that is polarizing. There are people that swear by Russell Westbrook, and there are others that will say, yeah, just a stat stuffer. I have to be honest, I was the biggest Russell Westbrook fan early in his career. I thought when he was with Oklahoma City, then with Houston, I just thought, especially those years in Oklahoma City, post-Durant, post-Harden, that he would eventually get it done in the postseason, and he didn't. And then eventually I realized that he wasn't going to get it done in the postseason, that if he was your best player or even second best player, it was going to be hard because Russell Westbrook could never slow it down when the game slowed down, which is what happens in the postseason. I think he might be, honestly, the most fiercest competitor I have ever seen in team sports. That's what made me fall in love with him in the early years, the late 2000s, early 2010s in Oklahoma City. I don't think I had ever seen a player with a more relentless energy and higher motor than Russell Westbrook. And yes, with it came a lot of turnovers. With it, at times, came Russell Westbrook. He did brick some shots over the course of the years. But I can't think of any team sport athlete legitimately that matches his every single night for 48 minutes intensity. I love that about him. Look, this guy has more triple doubles. He'll be the triple double king probably for eternity. 209 career triple doubles. He averaged a triple double in 4 separate regular seasons, including his last one here in Washington. He holds the record for the most rebounds in NBA history for a guard. And he's one of just 2 players, LeBron James being the other, to record over 25,000 career points and have over 10,000 career assists. He has the most overall combined points, rebounds, assists in a triple-double game in the postseason when he went for 51-10 rebounds and 13 assists. He had a 20-20-20 game in his career. He was a video highlight reel for many nights of his career. And what I didn't know until he played in Washington and then left Washington is what a revered and respected teammate Russell Westbrook was. You've perhaps seen some of the accolades out there. Kevin Durant wrote a long ode to his former teammate that was very, very complimentary. Too long to read, but essentially it started with, I remember asking assistant coach Mo Cheeks, what's harder to do, work out after practice or before? I only asked because by the time I would get to the gym, Russ was already done in the morning, and I usually got mine in after practice. And then he went on to talk about that story, and then he ended with, I don't care what happens. You can't erase what it was. The finals run in our early 20s, the All-Star game, seeing each other get injured and bounce back, the bus rides, the plane rides, the card games, the jokes, the arguments, the whole thing memorable to the whole Westbrook family. And he lists people by names. Much love and congratulations on an iconic career. I didn't know this about him until Tommy Shepard was the one that told me this. He told me it on the air and off of it. I remember saying, I don't think people understand what an incredible leader, mentor, and teammate Russell Westbrook is. He is beloved and revered and respected by everybody in the locker room, everybody in the building every day. And yet, when the rankings come out about the greatest of all time, He's not probably going to be on a top 20 list. He's certainly not going to be on a top 10 list, probably not on a top 20 list. You'd probably really have to push to get him into a top 25 because he didn't win in the postseason. The one MVP during the regular season in 2017, the 9 All-Star appearances, the 2-time scoring championships, all of the triple doubles, the triple double king. He made the NBA 75th anniversary team, but in the postseason, other than the deep run that he had as a very young player when they lost to the Miami Heat, Oklahoma City did in the NBA Finals. And of course, remember the first year that Golden State went, they blew the 3-1 series lead, and that's when Kevin Durant left and joined up with Golden State. I loved watching Russell Westbrook play basketball. I just don't think you can coach what he had in terms of just the fierce competitive part of his overall makeup. Incredibly athletic, all of that. But I understand where the pushback comes. The pushback comes with, when the game slowed down, he couldn't, and he struggled in a lot of those games over the course of his career when it got to the postseason. But it is a memorable career, no doubt. All right, so the Wizards' schedule came out yesterday. They had more national television games in the upcoming season than they've had in the last 3 seasons combined. So there is a little bit of love for the Wizards in the upcoming 2026-2027 season, a season that will open up on Wednesday night, October 21st at home against Milwaukee, and then they're home for their second game against Toronto. They're on Peacock a few times at Detroit on November 9th. They're also on Peacock March 1st at Phoenix. They're on NBC over the air, major network, NBC's Game of the Night on Tuesday, November 24th against Boston at home, and also on January 12th at Philly against Joel Embiid, Jaylen Brown, LeBron James. They're on Amazon Prime once. It'll be a matchup between Darren Peterson and A.J. DeBonsa, the top 2 picks in the draft, when Washington travels to Utah on February 27th. And then they're also on a nationally televised telecast on December 16th on ESPN at Boston. So 6 national TV major network or streamers for the NBA, for the Wizards. They didn't have that in the last 3 years combined. I'm not going to break down the schedule like I would an NFL schedule where the tough spots are, where they aren't. Just know this. It's going to be the first season in several where the Wizards are going to try to win basketball games, and they will be an interesting story when they have their best players on the floor. And the most notable of their best players to have on the floor for this upcoming season, Anthony Davis. If he is with this team for the season and plays, call it 60 plus, 65 plus, this is going to be a team that wins more than they lose and potentially wins enough to get themselves into the top 6 in the East and not have to play their way in through the play-in. I think that's in play if Anthony Davis is healthy. And is Anthony Davis from what we remember Anthony Davis to be. But a little bit of love for the Wizards compared to previous years because they're actually trying to win basketball games this year. And they had the number 1 overall pick in the draft. So it's not Trae Young and Anthony Davis alone. It's more so that they had the number 1 pick in the draft, and A.J. DeBonsa on national TV a few times is what they were looking for. All right, Ben Standing next. get to Ben in a second. G from the shop writing, salute to Russell Westbrook. Great career. One of my favorite players of his era. If you have a kid in sports, you want them to compete like Russ played the game. Night in, night out. So appreciative to have watched his career. Ben Standig is with us. We'll get to the game tonight. We'll get to what you thought of yesterday's fiasco in a moment. But I was a huge Westbrook fan, but eventually realized that he just couldn't slow it down enough in the postseason. But I said something, and I want you to either agree or to come up with somebody who was more of this than he was. But I can't remember, and I can't think of a major team sport athlete that competed as fiercely and as intensely every single night for the entire game more than he did.
I mean, it's hard to imagine there was somebody who was competing more than him. I mean, if you want to point to like some like Ray Lewis or somebody on the NFL level, but in terms of the NBA, kind of like what you said, like at some point in his career, it became for me, look, you just can't win the big games with Westbrook. This is not a guy who's going to be part of a title team or anything like that. He just can't. He was such a competitor, he just couldn't understand, I guess, to some degree, that his own limitations, because in order to do what he does, he doesn't have limitations, he just does it. And so that was that. But I remember, like the year he played here, up to that point, I was like, all right, I get it. It's really impressive. But when you watched it like game after game, and the way he was essentially almost just like carrying the Wizards to the postseason that year, my appreciation for the way he plays, the how hard he plays grew more for sure. And like I said, I'm glad for him. He's getting out. Did you see the video? His goodbye video?
I haven't seen it yet. Somebody just texted me, watch his video. I'll watch it afterwards. Haven't seen it.
Let's just say he clearly didn't make this decision at the spur of a moment. There's some planning here, but yeah, it was well done. So congrats to Russell Westbrook. I mean, I love the players who are just like the one of ones. I mean, like Magic Johnson was one of those. Charles Barkley was one of those, and Westbrook certainly one of those as well. Again, for better or for worse, he was definitely unique.
Yeah, I mean, I started off in the last segment saying it's going to be one of those careers that ends up being a legacy anyway for him that's polarizing, because there are those that will say stat stuffer and didn't get it done in the postseason, and others will say, yeah, but the way in which he accumulated those numbers was, like you said, one of one in many ways.
Yeah, no doubt. No doubt about it. I mean, he was, like I said, just, at times it just became kind of like, and I think also the thing is, like, because so much of the conversation kept veering towards, he's taking terrible shots, all that kind of deal, that it did kind of get away from the, the way he went about it. By the way, one of my favorite stats ever is the fact that Russell Westbrook is the Wizards' all-time leader in triple-doubles, having played here 1 year.
Yeah, well, he averaged a triple-double. That was his fourth and final season of averaging it.
Yeah, well, it just also goes to show that the Wizards have had a lack of consistent high-end talent. But yes, wild stuff. I'm
trying to think who held the triple-double record for the Wizards. Would it have been John? I can't even think of who would have held the triple-double record for them prior to that. I'll look it up. But I'm going to assume it's Wall.
That would be.
Is that a bad assumption?
That would be my assumption, outside of like if Wes Unseld have some sort of run like that.
That's a good one, because he had a lot of assists. I bet it. You know what? You're probably right. It's probably Unseld. Oh no, here it is. Okay. Westbrook's number one all time. Darrell Walker's 2. John Wall 3. Walker. Unseld 4.
Okay.
Yeah.
Forgot about Darrell Walker.
All right. So before we get to tonight, I haven't talked to you actually at all about this, not on the air or off of it, but what did you make of yesterday's interesting PR day from the people around Jaden's Daniels?
Yeah. Well, first off, I'm not smart enough to know exactly what is right here or not. I mean, I told, the whole point of NIL in general was the idea that, hey, the school's making the money off the player, the jersey or whatever, and the player doesn't get anything. So now this is a way for the players to get into that. Now, I guess when you're not in school anymore, does that go away? Because obviously I assume they're still selling Jaden Daniels jerseys and Joe Burrow jerseys and, all that. So it is an interesting angle from that regard.
That part of it is interesting.
Yeah. Now, the rest of it, I guess my thing is like, look, I buy that when he put out the statement saying, hey, don't worry, I'm focused on football only. But if you go back to that ESPN story initially, it is saying that they are getting information here from a Daniels spokesperson. So if you just wanted it to be quiet, just send a letter in, or do that, and that's it. I mean, if LSU puts it out there, well, then that's on LSU. But it's hard to wrap my brain around what is the point. I mean, again, maybe it makes sense to put some pressure on LSU publicly if they think that's the way to go. But then it's harder to say, well, I'm not focused on this. I mean, he's involved. I know you hire lawyers, so I get that. But that's the part that makes it a little more complicated. And I just think from a PR perspective, obviously, I mean, this is not great. I mean, the amount of memes that I've been sent about this, I mean, like the saying that the Commanders are no longer going to do high fives, they're only going to do high fours, to respect them, and not using the number and all these kinds of things. I mean, I just don't think this is a great looking at. Again, maybe that's just the price you pay if you think that you should be getting compensation on the other end. Again, I don't know exactly what makes sense there legally, but I don't know. It's just a tough look at the moment, even though go ahead and do it. I just, like I said, you didn't have to make it public necessarily, and it seems like that was the plan.
Yeah, it was a bad hit from a PR standpoint for a guy that's really never taken a bad hit. It was self-inflicted. It was, like you said, the statement where he says, hope that it will get done privately. Well, that ship sailed when they went to ESPN and laid out the whole story with family quotes. Just a horrible decision by whomever it was. I don't think it was him that decided to do this. And, some people think the damage, at least with the LSU fan base, is unrecoverable. I don't. He's such a good kid. He's going to have a great career. And hopefully by the time they start playing games, it's all forgotten, at least for us. All right, let's talk about tonight. Who's going to play and who isn't? Do you have any idea?
No, I mean, they've kept it quiet. I mean, my assumption would be the 20 odd players who didn't practice on Tuesday ahead of the joint practice are probably the ones, and that's all the names you would think of, the veteran names. So I'm going to guess most of them know. I mean, in terms of like the quarterback, they, to a degree, combine the playing time in the joint practice and the game. Jaden Daniels and Marcus Mariota played a lot in that practice. So I think, that's a way of probably saying, hey, they put in their work. They won't be here. The only thought would be it's the only home preseason game. Do you throw the fans a bone and just tell Jaden, all you're doing is giving handing off the bill 3 times and we're calling it a day, but, or, whoever's back there. But yeah, other than that, I would not imagine we're going to see too many of those people. Now, I think we would see, say, Sonny Styles, right? I mean, because he's a rookie and, the first steps, and there'll be other players, like I would imagine, like, say, like a Johnny Newton. I could kind of imagine Brandon Coleman and Chris Paul being out there, right? I mean, to get some work together, whatever. But in general, I wouldn't imagine we're going to have too many of the starters out there.
Do you think they should be out there?
This is such a fascinating topic.
It's a topic every year, but I'm asking it more So because you've got two new coordinators, you've got a lot of new players on one side of the ball, but you've got two coordinators who have never done it before, and they're going to do it, for 60 minutes tonight. I'm not saying because the starters aren't out there, they're not going to call plays. Of course they are, but wouldn't it be nice to get into, a little bit of rhythm with the players that are going to be with you on September 13th in Philadelphia?
I mean, 100%. It sounds perfectly reasonable and logical. And then, oh, by the way, sometimes players get hurt. Oh, yeah, right. Good point. We're not going to do that. So, right. I mean, yes, logically, of course. I mean, it makes all the sense in the world. I mean, you hope that whatever they're doing in practice in this regard is helping along that way as well. I do think there's a difference between practice mode and game mode. In practice mode, you can flub the whole signal call and it doesn't matter per se, right? In the game mode, you're getting a penalty or, you're going to cause confusion or, cost your team in some way. So I'm with you. I do think this is important for the two new coordinators to get a feel on game day. How is it actually going to function? It would be better if the main guys were out there. But like I said, I just don't, just based on the way it goes. Now, I will just say this, like let's say they do that, they're very conservative. I do think then in the next game, they need to be out there a little bit. I mean, I don't know what some teams do that. Some teams put their guys out there and other teams are like, nah, we're good. We'll see you in September. I don't know what exactly is the right way, but for this group, after the way last year went, it does feel like, hey, why don't we get out there and be competitive? Like Dan Quinn has said, he wants a competitive camp. Well, preseason essentially is part of the camp, right? So be competitive, get your guys out there, and I'm not saying they need to be out there for too long, but get out there a little bit. I think that would be helpful because they're not going to play in the third one. So if they sit tonight, okay, but then got to play somewhere would be my view.
All right. Ben on his Substack this morning wrote about the players to watch, jobs, roles, things to prove tonight. I would urge all of you to subscribe to Ben's Substack. You can get a link to it at his X account at Ben Standig. It's totally worth it. Is the 20% discount still available or not?
It is not.
Okay.
If you email me here,
sorry for asking.
On this, no, sorry. If you email me on the side, say Kevin Sheehan sent me. I'll see what I can do for you.
There you go. Okay. Well, just go to his X account and send him a DM. Is that okay? Because I don't want to give out your email address.
My email address is on the X account bio, so you can find it there.
All right. Very good. So what are you going to be watching for tonight?
Yeah, I mean, I do think the whoever is in there, the execution, is there false starts on the offense? Does appear to be any kind of confusion? Some of the basic nuts and bolts type deals. I mean, look, I think if Sonny Styles does play, let's see it. I mean, I didn't include him in the story that I just wrote, but let's see, him get out there. And, again, if a lot of the other guys are not around, then, he'll be one of the main guys for sure. So, see how he works. And obviously, I don't know what Miami's deal is. If Devin Achane is out there at all, maybe he won't be. He's obviously one of the more electric running backs in the league, so that would be a test for linebackers in general. In terms of some guys I mentioned in my story, it is kind of wild. It shows that how many other players they brought in that are interesting that you have a better feel probably than I do because you take calls and people email you all the time about who they're thinking about. I probably had almost nobody asked me about Johnny Newton. This guy was he was a 36th player in the pick in the draft 2 years ago, and he has not been able to, get a high rotation spot. It's not like he's been bad. It's just they haven't been, he just hasn't elevated up there. I did talk to him the other day after the practice, and I said, tell me how it's going. And he said, hey, I think this has been a great camp. I think I had a great OTA. I feel as good as I've ever been. And I don't take it as like, well, this is, of course, what's he going to say. I don't think he's that kind of a guy. So I do think it's interesting to see. This will be, if there's assuming there's no pain and there's no Kinlaw, and I don't think Tim Settle's going to play because he missed the joint practice with a calf strain, I was told. So, yeah, I think seeing a guy like Johnny Newton perform will be interesting. On the offensive side, I'm really curious to see a guy like Katron Allen, the 6th-round running back, because if I say he's had a quiet camp, running backs are always a bit tricky anyway. And it's more, if it is going to be a running back, it's going to be somebody like Bill, who's like, quick and shifty. But if you're a power guy running between the tackles and there's no tackling, I mean, it's kind of hard to demonstrate exactly what you have. This is obviously a full-blown football game, so let's see what he can do, because if he's able to show that he can contribute to, these short yardage situations or between the tackles and so on, then, maybe now all of a sudden we're like, okay, there's a piece of the running back pie for Bill, a piece for Rashad White, and now this kid's going to get in there. If not, then maybe it's Jeremy McNichols if they keep 4 or what have you. So I think those guys. And then, look, it's one thing to make your kicks in practice. You do it when the game is on. And I'm assuming hopefully they get a few opportunities to kick field goals. This is like the one time you're like, okay, maybe it's okay to stall in the red zone if we're talking about Callie McManus or Sam Hartman, and let the kickers get some shots. So just Drew Stevens able to go out there and make the kicks. And if he can, especially if there's anything from distance, I think that would go a long way towards him, further widening the gap with Jake Moody, if not, getting harder to beat him. Although, again, they both went 6 for 6 in the last practice. Of Moody bounced back, but Stevens has looked the more impressive so far.
Yeah, you've said that the ball kind of comes off his foot differently than it does with Jake Moody's. I made the point to you the other day. Dustin Hopkins, the way the ball came off his foot, they always told us was really, really impressive, explosive. The ball got up quickly, they would say. Where is Dustin Hopkins kicking? Is he still in the league? He's got to be, right? Somewhere? Is it Cleveland?
That was going to be my guess, but if you guys move around so much, looks like he is not on a team at this moment.
No, he's not on a team right now. He's not on a team right now.
Yeah, well,
where did he kick last year? He kicked in Cleveland in 2023 and was released last summer by the Browns and hasn't kicked since.
I guess he didn't. Yeah, okay. Yeah, he didn't kick last year. In my head, it always feels like guys like him and Graham Gannett were making 55-yarders every game, and we're like, hey, Washington can't find a kicker. But, yeah.
Graham Gannett's still kicking right with the Giants, or is he somewhere? Where?
No, I think you're right. I mean, last I had heard. I mean, he's been lights out for them, but typically.
I know. As long as he's been healthy, because he's been injured a bunch.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. Well, I mean, like I said, I mean, to see Stevens get out there and make the kicks, for fun, make them from distance, I just think it goes a long way. And whatever we're going to see on TV, and it's obviously if we're looking at it from behind him, you can't quite see what I'm talking about, but in terms of the speed, but the angle of the kick at a minimum, if it sort of goes, up but straight versus like an arc, I think that's kind of what I'm talking about. It just flies through the air, and that's why he's able to have more distance, where Moody is more of a traditional, arc of it, which is fine, but then that loses some steam at the end.
All right. I wanted to finish up with this, and that is Colson Yankoff. You've talked about him. You've written about him. There have been a lot of people who have spent some time out there over the last week to 10 days that keep bringing his name up. Denton said to me yesterday on the show, I said, give me the player that, has impressed you from sort of back of the pack, Yankoff. What is it that everybody likes about Yankoff?
Well, at a base level, like I said, he really has just been catching kind of everything that's getting thrown his way. So that stands out, of course. And, I don't know how much people can capture this watching him, but, his level of athleticism is, pretty impressive. Not only because of the fact that he played quarterback, running back, and receiver in college, and now he's a tight end. So to be able to do all those things is something, but also he's 6'4", 225, but is still one of the faster guys on the team. And so can you figure out a way to put that athleticism on the field? Now, the issue to a degree is that because he's only 225, blocking is not going to be his strength. He is pretty good at special teams, and that's, maybe his entree onto the roster. And then can you do more from there? To a degree, we're probably overhyping him because, I don't know, how, even if he makes the team, how much is he really going to play, assuming that Chigakonko, John Bates, and Ben Sinnott are good to go. But I'm just always intrigued by this type of project, a guy who's like, his position is more or less athlete. How do you figure out how to use him? And, it's looking like he's a guy that, hey, you can actually get the ball to down the field. You can, throw it to him when he's reliable. And obviously those are, fun things to see.
I mean, do you have any sort of clue as to how they would use him if they did use him? Because the athleticism, the athlete, he's not a pure tight end. He's probably more of a receiver than he is a tight end. But we haven't included him in our receiver conversations. So let's just say that they have to keep him on the roster, and they see a way for him to contribute. How would it be?
Yeah, so when I talked to him the other day, we're talking about Wes Welker and about the fact that, like, I know some people said to me, wait, why would you have a former receiver coach the tight ends? And obviously they were in a little bit of a pickle because of what happened with the previous tight end coach. But from a receiving standpoint, a lot of the routes that you're running as a tight end, if you're not in line, if you're from the slot, is exactly what Wes Welker was doing with the Patriots. And Yankoff talked about how Welker has been a real wealth of knowledge for him. And so that's kind of what I would imagine, just a guy who would be, somewhere in the slot, more or less, and it's like, I don't want to, I'm not comparing him to Travis Kelce, the player, don't get me wrong. But when you watch Travis Kelce, he's not really playing a traditional tight end. He is more lining up as a slot receiver often and going in that route. So I think it would be like that. Again, especially in the world now where Stephon Diggs exists. So, like, they have two receivers that they can have out there at all times. I think all the other potential experiments, take a little bit of a backseat, and he would be one of those. But that's how I would think they would look to use him. And especially, if Chigakonko missed time for whatever the reason, then that's where maybe Yankoff gets a larger role and they really show what they can do with him.
All right. Enjoy tonight as much as you can. Fingers crossed nobody gets hurt. And it would be nice, I think, to see Jaden in the game with David Blau calling the plays just to see how that works. I will talk to you later. Thank you.
Of course, man. See you.
That was, of course, our Washington Football Commanders insider, Ben Standig. So there's a lot still going on out there today about the Jaden Daniels situation from yesterday. And Paul Feinbaum, Mr. SEC himself, weighed in, I guess, Max, right, this morning with the Junkies.
Sure did.
So we'll play what he said about the hit that Jaden's going to take, at least at LSU, when we come back.
Kevin Sheehan on the Team 98.
From Coach D35, Kevin, I like Mark and Largo's point. ESPN has the Super Bowl for the first time, and they want Dallas. The quarterback they fear the most is JD5. Come on, man. Reasonable point. Yeah. I can't believe that Mark and Largo actually has a fan and a supporter on that one. Mark and Largo yesterday called us and said, this is all basically a ruse created by ESPN because they do have the Super Bowl, and it is their first ever Super Bowl that they will be televising, which, by the way, that means it's Buck and Aikman, right? Obviously.
Yeah.
It'll be the Monday Night Crew. Buck and Aikman will be on the Super Bowl on February 14th, Valentine's Day, latest Super Bowl ever, and it'll be on ESPN. I would assume, by the way, it's on ESPN and ABC. Has to be, right? It'll be on both of them. I'm guessing that that's what it'll be. And Mark and Largo said, what team would, ESPN want to be a part of its first ever televised Super Bowl? By the way, ABC has televised Super Bowls in the past. And I'll tell you, I'm pretty sure the first ever Super Bowl that wasn't on either NBC or CBS, because I believe they were the networks. NBC had the AFC package. CBS had the NFC package. This goes back to the 60s, 70s, and 80s. ABC had Monday Night Football. But I believe the first ever Super Bowl on ABC was Redskins Broncos in January of 88, the Doug Williams Super Bowl. I think Joe Theismann was on the call as an analyst with what would have been Al Michaels and Dan Deerdorf, perhaps. See if I got that right. Look that up somewhere, Max. The Super Bowl, see if it was the first ever on ABC, and see if I got the announcing crew right. I think it was Michaels, Deerdorf, and Theismann. Theismann was retired at that point and was starting in broadcasting.
I am seeing, this is Google AI.
Yeah.
Super Bowl
22.
No, I'm seeing Super Bowl 19 with San Francisco 49ers defeated the Miami Dolphins. Play-by-play announcers were
that was the first on ABC.
Frank
fault.
Gifford,
Yep.
Don Meredith, and Joe T.
Yes. Oh, Joe T was on that call in the 84 Super Bowl, January of 85?
According to Google's AI.
Okay. Yeah, that was at Stanford Stadium. Cool day, man. That 49er team was good. That was the only Super Bowl that Marino made it to. The Dolphins were unbelievable that season. And Theismann was on that call. So that was Gifford. But look to see what the broadcasting team was for the 88 Super Bowl. Because that was ABC. I know it was ABC. I think that was Michaels. Gifford was no longer there as the Monday Night Football host. So I think it was him, Deerdorf, and Theismann.
I'm seeing Al Michaels, Deerdorf, and Frank Gifford on the ABC.
And Gifford.
Yeah, that's what it's saying.
Well, I got two of them right. And I got it wrong on the first year ABC had it. Whatever. ESPN/ABC has the Super Bowl this year. And Coach D35 believes Mark and Largo has a point that they would love to have Dallas in that Super Bowl. And the quarterback that they think could prevent Dallas from going to the Super Bowl, JD5. So they kind of made up the whole story yesterday. I'll tell you what, they made up a doozy if they did. It was a pretty good strategy. What are they going to do with Philadelphia, though? If that conspiracy theory
I don't think anyone's
has
concerned.
legs, don't they have to knock Philadelphia out with some sort of PR scandal?
I think they're confident Philly's going to do it himself. I mean, Nick Sirianni was trying to keep the message fresh and researching via Chat GPT. So who knows, man?
What was Nick Sirianni doing?
He said this in one of the pressers he had during the preseason or during training camp that in order to figure out how to keep the message fresh, he was asking Chat GPT for suggestions.
Okay.
Doesn't inspire confidence from me.
I really want them to fail this year.
As I think we all do.
I think we all do, but I have a feeling it could happen. You know, I was looking just at the early starts for all the division teams the other day, and let me pull it up because Philadelphia has kind of a difficult early start too. Because at least the way it looks now, at Philly, at Dallas, Seattle is not dipping your toes into the 2026 season, at least based on what we think those teams will be. Philly's schedule opens with Washington at home and then at Tennessee. So I guess that doesn't look super imposing, based on what those teams were last year. Then they're at Bears, Rams at home, Jags at home, and Panthers at home. And the Panthers were a playoff team last year. Dallas opens with the Giants on Sunday Night Football, then has us, then Ravens, Texans, Bucks, Packers, Eagles for them. And then the Giants, I think the Giants were the one that was kind of tough early. Cowboys, Rams, first 2 weeks. But then they go Titans, Cardinals, Washington. On paper, and I don't play the schedule game a lot, but if you're going to catch a team healthy, the odds are it would be earlier in the season rather than later in the season. And, at Philly, at Dallas, 2 road games, and then the defending Super Bowl champion Seahawks coming to town is not, doesn't look great. By the way, Terrion Arnold, did you see this story? Picked the Seahawks. This is the guy who was charged with multiple felonies earlier this summer. 8 felony charges to be exact, kidnapping, robbery included in the felony charges. He doesn't go to trial on those cases until I think there's the next court date is like early October, but they'll be able to push it off until probably after the season. But Terrion Arnold, who has started for the Lions the first 2 years and was a first-round pick out of Alabama in 2024, and the Lions cut him loose, and the Seahawks signed him. But there were other teams very interested in signing him regardless of his current status. And I guess they must know that the NFL isn't going to do anything just based on the charges. They're going to wait to see how it plays out in court. That story is a very interesting one. I won't read it now, but it's one looking up because apparently Arnold was essentially accused of orchestrating a kidnapping and beating of 3 men that he thought stole like a bunch of cash and other items like luxury jewelry and watches and bags from him, but they kidnapped and beat the wrong people. So we'll see what happens there. All right. Paul Feinbaum, longtime, SEC network, ESPN, and longtime talk show host in Alabama and throughout SEC country. He was on with the Junkies this morning, and he weighed in on the Jaden Daniels PR cease and desist LSU fiasco from yesterday.
Earlier in the week that when we hit Friday, we'd be talking about the Commanders' first preseason game and whether we'd see Jaden on the field. But it's all this off-the-field shenanigans that has become front and center here. What's your read on Jaden versus LSU?
I want to say one thing. I'm not an equivocator, but I got to know Jaden when he was at LSU, really liked him, talked to him a lot, and I would interview Brian Kelly. And even when he went to the Commanders, there was a great sense of pride in what he did the first year. I said all that to say this. He's lost all of that from everywhere and everyone in LSU Nation after what happened this week. And I know it's been said here before, but I rarely have ever seen a dumber, more senseless move. I don't know who pulled the strings, but all the cleanup on aisle 3 from Jaden Daniels from this moment on will not be enough. He has made a terrible mistake. He can be successful in Washington. I hope he is, but I would advise him to never waste another second in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, because they are done with him.
That is quite. That's the first time I've heard that. You told me to play that today. And Feinbaum, nobody's more in touch with SEC country than he is. With that said, personally, I think that's a bit exaggerated, a bit hyperbolic, I would say. If you spent any time yesterday watching anything, listening to anything, or following any of the LSU, social media stuff, there is no doubt that right now they appear to be done with him, and that's really sad. The idea of Jaden not being welcomed back to stand on the sidelines with Justin Jefferson and, Jamar Chase and Mason Crosby for a big game during his bye week or, big playoff game or whatever. This is where the person responsible for this way miscalculated the reaction. And yet I think it was super predictable, and probably more so predictable from their fan base than from ours. But I don't think that this is unrecoverable for him. I don't. He's very, very naturally likable, also introverted. Also, I do think that there is a sense among those that have followed his career, whether you're an LSU fan, a Washington fan, or just a college football or an NFL fan, that you realize that this probably wasn't as much him as it was someone else. So I think that you can always repair something like that when you meant as much as he did to that place. Yeah, but that is, wow. You told me that it was strong from Feinbaum. I would just disagree and say, yes, he damaged his reputation a lot with the LSU fan base, no doubt. I would also say, if I'm an LSU football fan, I would also say, man, that Brian Kelly, man. Brian Kelly, by the way, is a good football coach, whatever. Beside that point, he's the one that started all this. He's the one that promised a recruit something that he had no intention of living up to. He promised a high-powered defensive back recruit the number 5 jersey, and then talked him out of taking it last year. So he lied going in, then talked the kid out of it, and in the meantime, reportedly told Jaden, I'm protecting your jersey. We're protecting your jersey. Of course, he can't protect it anymore because he's not there. Lane Kiffin's there now. I mean, in many ways, somebody said, where is this? Hold on, I want to read it to you guys. Essentially, somebody sent me a tweet just saying, get my you-know-what out of Jaden Daniels' jock. No, I look, I am a big Jaden Daniels fan. There's no doubt about it. But I think I actually have called it pretty fairly on this. I've been very critical. I just don't think my true feeling is this wasn't him driving the cease and desist and the leaking of and the outward approach to ESPN to tell the story with family quotes. I mean, it's not even him in the quote. It's the family in the quote that's hurt and disturbed by all of this and profoundly, deeply disappointed and profoundly disrespected. I just don't think it's really him. I would imagine that from what happened in the reaction, especially the LSU reaction, it was probably a day in which he's like, what are you guys doing to me? Who thought this was a good idea? Yeah, I'm upset that my number is being given out, but this isn't the result I wanted. But I do think he is the type of person naturally that can recover from this, even with the LSU fan base. I hope it happens for him. That's one of those things you don't want to see taken away from him, especially when it's self-inflicted. All right. Wanted to finish up with a few things and one last thought on tonight's game. That's next. Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980 and the team980.com. See what Ben Johnson, the head coach of the Chicago Bears, said the other day in a comprehensive story written by The Athletic on Ben Johnson during this training camp. He said that his goal is to win the Super Bowl, but it's much more than that. Quote, I want to have the highest scoring offense ever. I know how many points per game they scored, the 2013 Denver Broncos, and I want to surpass them. I want shutouts. I want blowouts, closed quote. The Bears, by the way, last year ranked 9th in the NFL in scoring during the 2025 season with a 25.9 points per game average. And this is an interesting comment to want to be the highest scoring team in NFL history, because the highest scoring teams in NFL history, if you look at, points per game, more so than overall points, because remember, we've gone to a 17-game schedule when for much of the last 4 decades, it's been a 16-game schedule. So if you look at points per game, the all-time points season, Denver in 2013 with Peyton Manning throwing, 55 touchdowns, I think, 37.9 points per game. They lost in the Super Bowl to Seattle. The 2007 New England Patriots are the second highest scoring team in the history of the game at 36.8 points per game. They obviously lost in the Super Bowl to the Giants. The 2018 Kansas City Chiefs averaged 35.3 points per game. They lost to the Patriots at Arrowhead in their first AFC Championship game. The 2011 Packers averaged 35 a game, and they lost in the divisional round to the New York Giants in the postseason. The 98 Vikings with Randall Cunningham and Randy Moss averaged 34.8 points per game. They missed a field goal that would have given them a double-digit lead late and got beat in the NFC Championship game by the Atlanta Falcons. And then based on points per game, the 83 Skins are the 6th highest scoring team in NFL history. They averaged 33.8 points per game. That was the year Joe Theismann was the league MVP, and they lost in the Super Bowl to the Raiders. So the top 6 scoring teams in NFL history, none of them won the Super Bowl. So the goal of being the highest scoring team in the league, and that quote in particular has gotten a lot of attention because it was more focused on the offense, the points per game, than it was on winning the Super Bowl. I don't see the Bears. I see his creativity as top shelf for sure. But I don't see the Bears having the kind of team that could go out there and average over 38 points a game, 38 points plus a game. I don't. They should be a good team, but that division is tough. I'd take right now Green Bay or Detroit, one of the two in front of Chicago. We're a couple of weeks, by the way, we're now 4 weeks away from our first full-fledged football Friday of the year, college and pro. Right? 4 weeks, something like that. Yeah, 4 weeks away from it. One last thought about tonight and the preseason game against the Dolphins. Obviously, you just don't want anybody to get hurt, but I really, really don't want to see them tiptoe in fear during these preseason games. I understand that the Ravens game on August 28th, probably no one's playing. But keep in mind that is still 16 days away from the season opener. So if nobody plays in that game, and they do play a little bit against Detroit a week from tomorrow, you're talking about 22 days in between actual play on the field against an opponent. I know that they have a joint practice with the Ravens, and I'm sure they're pointing to that joint practice as their last preseason opportunity. But, man, I just think that we've been through it here in this town over the years with the preseason being treated in a way in which, like, they're allergic to it, they're fearful of it, and it has resulted at times in slow starts to the season. Let's face it, last year, the Giant game wasn't an overwhelmingly impressive game. The Green Bay game wasn't at all impressive. Now, week ones are tough, but if you go back to the year before, they got run out of the building by Tampa Bay in their opener. That was a first week, and that was a first time for the quarterback playing. I'd like to see these two coordinators go into the opener feeling like they've got it not figured out, but that it's buttoned up. I don't know how you accomplish that without doing something and taking advantage of these rehearsals that sort of closely mirror regular season atmospheres. Long way from the product, understood. Back on Monday, Chris is next.